words. We soak in many different things of how we sort of live life. So we learn how to walk, we learn how to speak, and at the end of the day, it's like we soak in everything from the environment, you know. So there's no notion of an identity yet. We just sort of soak in everything that's around us. So if we, let's say, grow up in an environment that's positive and playful and nice, we sort of soak in that energy. And if we grow up in an environment that's maybe dominated by not so nice things, we also soak in that. And you know, there's a lot of studies also being done that if we grow up, like growing up, we have a lot of traumas that are developed already at birth, or even, you know, in our childhood between 0 and 8, I think. And then what happens is, so we grow up, we are usually, unless we have, let's say, gone through some really big traumas, we are usually happy as a child. You know, we're present to what happens, to what shows up. So we play, we're just happy, you know, like there's emotions coming up. If it's fear or if it's anger, we usually go through it. It comes to us, we go through it, and it's gone again. So everything happens very spontaneously in the present moment. And if you sort of think back when you were younger, like in your, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, there's this memory of a very calm and of a feeling of just being present, being happy. Of course, there's also moments of when we were angry, or when we, you know, somebody took our toy and we wanted it back. But mostly we were just happy. You know, we didn't have thoughts like, oh my God, now today I played for 2 hours with Michael, and it was really horrible, and how can he play like this? You know, maybe during the play, maybe we feel like that in a way, but we don't have those kind of thoughts where we jump from the present to the past and to the future, and to the past and the future. And somehow we grow up, and you know, I remember the moment when I was young and I looked at my parents or my mother. She spoke to others, and I saw in a way how fake she was. You know, she was not fake as a person, and I don't want to speak negatively about her, but I could sense this adult thing, you know, where people pretend and they are concerned about the future, and they feel guilty about the past, and I never really understood it, and I wanted to understand it somehow because it felt like there's something really interesting in there. Because as a child, you know, for you that's like new or something different, and you find it maybe boring, your joyful presence. But then there's something exciting about living in the future and being concerned about things that are not even happening. And so we grow up, you know, and we go to school, so we get influenced a lot by our teachers, by what is told to us at school, meaning we learn a lot about what we should think, and not so much about how we should think. And yeah, basically we get graded for, you know, whether we can memorize certain things, but we're not looked at our true talents. You know, we're so diverse in our talents, and school is basically just putting a standard, and we have to all go through it, and it's not considered what kind of strengths we have or talents and so on. And then slowly, like what happens is, you know, before we were like sort of really grounded in the presence of whatever happened, and we were not concerned about the future. You know, we were not 5 years old or 8 years old, and we were thinking, oh my God, one day if I leave school, you know, what will I do? There's just some kind of trust in life, and you know, beyond life, because we're just trust. You know, there's nothing to worry about. But slowly, this sense of I'm separate from, I don't know, from life or from this trust is slowly growing and growing. And so all of a sudden we get concerned and worried about things that are not actually happening, you know. So before it was things, let's say we faced things that were happening. Let's say somebody took our toy away, or somebody, I don't know, hit us or whatever, and they said something bad at us, and we reacted to what was happening in the moment, right? And and later, like when we grow up in our teens, you know, late teens, and this sense of a self is getting stronger and stronger, and we're actually not so much reacting to what's happening anymore, but much more to what's not happening. And what's not happening is, oh my God, in 1 week I have this exam, and what if I don't study, then I will not pass it. If I don't pass it, then this will happen. If I don't, then so on and so on, right? So it's constantly like we're so obsessed with the future and the past that life is sort of, or has become I don't know, something that causes more suffering than joy in the moment. And you know, it's not just that for a few people it's like that, but in a way that's how we grew up as society. And at some point, you know, for some people this lasts maybe until they're, I don't know, 40, 50, 60, and they have a midlife crisis, and they're like, oh shit, what have I done? You know, what am I doing? I'm not even happy. I have maybe a house, I have family, I have achieved many things according to society, but I'm not happy at all. And for some people this is coming earlier, and you know, and I think it's just in a healthy way to ask a few questions and wonder what really matters in life. And for me, those questions, they came when I was 12 or 13, and I asked the questions, you know, for instance, happiness. You know, we all in a way have a drive to be happy. And what I learned is that in order to be happy, truly happy, not on, you know, on the standards of society or on social media or Instagram, but to be truly happy, who's the last authority, you know, to be happy? Is it, do I want to please others? Do I want to please my parents? Do I want to please my manager? Do I want to please my friends? Or is it something, do I want to be the last authority in seeing whether I'm happy or not? And obviously for me, you know, the answer was easy. It's like, yeah, if I want to be happy, and I don't care whoever, it doesn't matter what anybody else in the world thinks. It doesn't matter whether it's my parents, my friends, teachers, whoever. I felt such a strong urge to just feel happy in my skin. And I learned that in order to do that, in a way we have to learn other means of thinking and of perceiving the world and ourselves, especially because what I learned, I also grew up playing tennis on a competitive level, on a national level, and I learned that you have, in order to be successful, you have to have a completely different mindset and seeing yourself and the world in a very different way. And I feel like when it comes to being happy and being, I don't know, having like a healthy mindset and just, you know, just feel good in our skin, I think it requires a different mindset. And a different mindset, I would say, even beyond that, it requires to question our identity in a way, you know, and not in a way that you have to believe a new religion, or you have to join some spirituality, or that you have to join some sect or something. Not at all. I'm like a big fan of just using what means you have available, you know, using the mind, using the presence and consciousness, whatever you want to call it, but not something, you know, not something that's reserved to some elite, but something that you have right now, right here. And that's available to all of us at all times. And I truly believe, you know, when I started to get into this questioning the status quo, I perceived and experienced a huge shift in many different ways. And that's also what I want to share. I don't want to share, you know, what you should believe or how you should live your life or anything like this, but I want to share, you know, to question certain things, some certain basic, very deep, fundamental things that I believe hinder us from seeing, I don't know, the paradise, the love, the joy that is within us and around us. You know, although we put a lot of focus usually on the negative, on a society level, on a personal level, on a family level, I think what this life or this stuff is made of is is joy, and it's a peace that is beyond a peace of mind. It's beyond anything like this. It's not touchable by any event in life, no matter how great or no matter how good it is. And yeah, I wanna tell maybe one story which I love. So I like to tell analogies or stories. Okay, maybe before I do that, I want to go a bit deeper into the question of who am I, because I think the question of who am I is the key to questioning all those, let's say, beliefs or illusions that we have about ourselves. Like, when it comes to the question of who am I, you could start and say, look, I am Benjamin. I was born in Germany. I live in Switzerland, and I'm that many years old, and I'm married or not married, and I have these hobbies and so on. But this is not what life is about. This is what maybe life in society is about, but this is not what will make you happy. You can have all the, all the money in the world, all the fame, you can have family, you can have a beautiful house, you can have all of that together, and still you would think something is lacking, and you will continue feeling that lack. So when it comes to the question of who am I, it's much deeper than that. So it's a sense of first of all understanding or eliminating what we're not. And that's like a beautiful exercise. You could almost imagine like an onion ring, and you peel the onion and there's more and more layers to it. And I would say that let's say the outer layers, what we look like, our nationality, whether we're healthy or not healthy, and so on. Then maybe another layer is our emotions, our traumas, and to question, and it's always about to question, am I my nationality? Am I my color of the skin? Am I my beliefs? Am I my thoughts? And what happens a lot is we identify with all those things so quickly that it's so hard for us to let go of those identifications. And guess what? Those identifications are driving our entire day, every day. We're driven by, let's say I have the belief I'm not good enough. Let's say it could be in certain situations, like when I present something, or I don't know, when I meet a certain person and I have this strong belief I'm not good enough in a certain situation. And this will drive, many different things, how I will perform or not perform in this situation. And there's, people think because they have a darker skin color, they are not as worthy as someone else. Other people think that, I don't know, if they have a lot of money, they are higher than others, which can be a positive, like it can have positive effects, but also very negative effects. So, but what I'm saying is you can go beyond all of those beliefs and question whether this is really who you are. And I think on a level, you can eliminate everything. And I want to tell an analogy for that. So there's the analogy of, just imagine there's a screen. Maybe some of you know it already, but I want to go deeper into this. So imagine there's a screen, and on the screen there's a movie being played, right? So just imagine it's a TV, and on the screen is a movie being played. And usually we identify with the action figures in the movie and all the moving images and all the action and everything. And this is sort of represents, in this analogy, it represents life. So I'm Benjamin, there's a form, there's this body, there's thoughts, there's emotions, and all of this stuff is happening on the screen. And so what we usually do, I take myself as an action figure, Benjamin, and I take myself as the subject, ultimate subject, and I look at everything else as objects, right? So there's all these different objects. And so what I do is I have my relationships from subject to object, and I'm separate from everything, right? And when we do that, in my perspective, and that's how we grew up, because what happens is, as part of being in the movie and as an action figure, I am vulnerable and I can be better and worse. It's the world of duality. And when I'm when I enter this world consciously and I identify as an action figure, there will be a past and a future, and I always have to be worried about my reputation, what other people think of me, and whether I do the right thing or not. So it's complicated and complex. And guess what? What we usually try to do is we try to find this peace that I talked about earlier, this peace beyond peace of mind. We try to find that peace within the movie. And in my experience, this is exactly what keeps us from being happy, because this happiness that I'm talking about is not part of the movie, but it's actually the screen itself. And you know, it's very hard to imagine for our brain and mind, this analogy, but if like, the people I usually speak to, it resonates very strongly because there's some kind of intuition for that. So meaning, so without the screen, there's no movie. There's no movie happening, right? The movie needs a screen. So the action is happening, and all our focus is usually on the actions and on the screen and on the people and on and everything that's happening. And if we are sort of lost in that hamster wheel, we are, as I said, we are constantly chasing happiness because we think with the next job that we get, with the next relationship that we get, with the next house that we buy, and so on, we'll be finally happy, you know? We've all had this, like, thinking, oh, once I finish school, everything will be falling into place. Once I have enough money, once I do this, it's always postponing, you know, the present moment into the future. And so within this movie, we can never be happy, but the art is to realize and see that maybe entertain the possibility that we have never stepped into this movie. And that's, as I said, hard to imagine, but just sort of entertain this for a moment. So imagine if we are not this, that means everything within the movie is perceivable. So usually what we do is I pretend I'm Benjamin and I look at everything else as an object and I am the ultimate subject. And that way I sort of pretend that I am not part of the movie, you know, I'm separate from everything else. But what I'm sort of saying is, you take a step back and you also see Benjamin or yourself as part of the movie. And then the question is, what is then the ultimate subject, you know? And for me, I mean, some people, they call it like a higher power. Some people may call it God. Some people call it, I don't know, whatever, like an energy or like whatever. It doesn't matter. But what I'm sort of saying is, you know, there's maybe something higher than Benjamin that's sort of driving everything, you know, and maybe the director of the show or whatever. But the problems usually happen when we take ourselves as Benjamin to be the director of this show, and then it's sort of becoming a mess, you know, it's sort of a failed system. So what I'm saying is, you know, the problem is not with Benjamin or with anyone else, but the problem is sort of comes into existence when we take ourselves to be something, a limited entity that doesn't even have an existence. So in this analogy is, so we are, what I'm saying is we are the screen. So what I'm saying is we are the screen, and the attribute of the screen is, you know, is basically a higher power. It's basically joy. It's the true love. It's that peace that doesn't know an opposite. So it's the non-duality. And you know, when it comes to the question of who am I, ultimately you can eliminate everything that you can perceive and everything. So everything you can see, everything you can smell, everything you can touch, and so on. So this means what is left, you know, when you eliminate everything, what is left? And what is left is, in a way, for those of you who maybe have meditated before, or, you know, we have all felt this state of just bliss or peace. That's our true nature. And yeah, that's basically, you know, we cannot sort of grasp it or objectify it, but it's always there. It's always so. And it's also funny, you know, when like many spiritual path. I wouldn't call this one a spiritual path or anything like this. But any, like most spiritual paths, what they do is they tell the action figure in the movie and say, hey, you know what? If you do this and this and this, you will be at ultimate peace and you will feel bliss and everything. But guess what? The action figure is never able to get out of the movie and become the screen, because it's just, its nature is to be part of the movie and be part of this noise. So what I'm saying is the opposite. I don't tell you to become like the screen, but what I'm saying is, in a way, question that maybe you have never, maybe you pretend to be one of the action figures in the movie, but you have actually never become that action figure. You have always been the screen, because without the screen, the action figure doesn't even exist. You see, what you are is before you wake up in the morning, is before, when Benjamin wakes up in the morning, there's something he wakes up into, right? It's the other way. Like, you know, some people say we are born into the world, or like we exist in the world, but I think it's more like our experience is more like that the world exists, like that the world exists in us. And basically it just shifts everything completely around. It means that you know, like we can go into some concrete things. For instance, control, right? When we try, like we go through life and we think we're in control of so many things, right? We're in control of the job that we have. We can choose whatever job we want. We can choose the partner in our life we want. We can choose the city we live in, and we can choose many, many different things. And when things go well, we're like, wow, look, I'm on top of everything. I'm in control of everything. It's great. Life is amazing. And when things, and we take credit for that. And when things don't, you know, seem to be so great in that movie, we're like, oh, we look, you know, what did we do wrong? And we're constantly trying to manage so many things. What does this person think? What does this person think? How do I make sure that this is going to happen? And when something doesn't go so well, we feel guilty or bad, or we think about, we should have done this. I shouldn't have married this person. I should have gone here. You know, this is like a constant jumping from the past to the future, past to the future. And it could also be that, oh, finally I want to get enlightened. You know, when will I finally get enlightened? And I have been meditating for 20 years and I'm still not enlightened. But this will never happen to that action figure, because that's exactly, in my eyes, the biggest fallacy and confusion in spirituality, or when it comes to, yeah, this whole topic of also self-improvement, is exactly that. Is that we try to become, like, what we do is we identify as an action figure, and then we try to be, so that what happens is the screen forgets that it's a screen. It tries to identify as the action figure, which slowly, seemingly happens so, but the importance is seemingly, it never becomes reality. And then what happens is, as the action figure, we try to become the screen, because we hear, oh, I heard this, you know, Buddha, or I heard this guru, he said, I can be love, I can be abundance, and I can be peace. But we forget that this is actually our starting point, and we actually never unbecome that. And that's, for me, the difference also between becoming and being. So there's like this book called The Symbolism of the Cross, and it's, you know, in a non-religious way, it looks at the cross, the meaning of the cross. And you have two axes, basically. One is the horizontal, which is sort of the becoming, and it's sort of the past and the future, and that's sort of where the action figure, you know, goes about its path. And then there's the vertical, which is basically the being. So you have the being and the becoming, and this is what we are. This is a never-changing, it's not even a state, it's just our nature, our true nature. And what we usually identify with is this becoming path. So I'm here, one day I'll be there, and I'm only gonna be happy if I reach this and this and this and this, and if this person thinks of me this, and da 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 da. And we totally forget that and this is actually happening in parallel. It's almost like two worlds that are happening in parallel. And we forget that what we truly are is this being always. And it's like almost like you can, when you are in this energy of being, it's not an energy, but let's call it like if you're in this state of being, and that's true peace, you will see the movements and motivations of the action figure like very clearly from the solution. When you look at the world from this becoming, the world looks like a really sad place. Everything is unfair, unjust, and it's really a struggle and a fight every day from this perspective. And you heard about this peace, and in a way, you try to become this peace because you heard about it, it's possible. But this is the dilemma, exactly that, because you can never become what you already are. And so what I'm saying in a way is it's enough to realize and see, to clearly see what you're not, that you're not this. Maybe this is going on. Maybe Benjamin, he lives his life and he works and he has a job and he, I don't know, has hobbies and does that and that. But if for Benjamin this is what his focus in life is and he wants to have a great reputation and everything, then this is a huge struggle and he will never find happiness on that path, because only when he sees that what he already is and it can never become not what it is already, then he doesn't have to meditate for 10 years in order to get it. He doesn't have to do anything because he already is it. But not as what we think we are, but as, you can't deny the truth because it's so already anyway. Yeah. So basically, so I wanted to tell one story, exactly. I wanted to tell one analogy today. So the analogy is, so it's basically the second one. Maybe some of you have heard about it before, but I love it because it's so powerful. So there's a mushroom family called cordyceps. It actually exists in the world, and I've seen them, for instance, in Bhutan once, and they're like, I think in China, everywhere around the world. So what they are is, so the only way for that mushroom family to reproduce is that they spit out spores, and what happens is they have to find another mushroom family because they're usually very largely distributed, right? So they're not close to each other, but they're far away from each other. So this mushroom family, it spits out spores, and it has to find a way to get to the other mushroom family. And the wind is not enough, so it needs to find a transportation mean, and it basically hacks into an ant, into the brain of an ant. And so the spore hacks into the brain of the ant, and the spore takes over the brain of the ant, so the control. So it sort of says, hey ant, I need you now, and you walk to the next mushroom family. But it has to do it in a way that it doesn't recognize, the ant doesn't recognize that it's sort of a foreign control overtake, right? So what it does is the ant automatically switches and believes those thoughts that are saying, oh, now I have to walk to this other forest where the mushrooms are. It takes those thoughts or this direction as its own. So the ant, without questioning where this thought comes from, I have to go to this ant family, to this mushroom family, it just follows the orders. It's like, yeah, so it follows its orders. It goes to the mushroom family, and once it reaches the mushroom family, it basically kills the ant, that spore, and out of this, because then it gets the other spore from the other mushroom, and then another mushroom grows out of the brain of the ant. So that's happening in reality actually every day. So the analogy here is that, it's about this identification. This is like a key thing here, meaning take thoughts, for instance, right? Thoughts, and you can also take feelings, but let's stick with thoughts. So we usually believe that thoughts are ours, that we are the thinker of thoughts, and that the thoughts are about us. That's what we very strongly believe. Like, you know, for many people who have never thought about this or seen that, it seems like a ridiculous idea. But some of us, you know, when we, like, let's say it could be through meditation or through self or whatever, some of us, we can see that maybe it's not so. Maybe thoughts are just coming and going. And, you know, as I said earlier, I don't want you to believe me at all. Like, just see for yourself. If you, for instance, you sit down and you just sit and you observe what's happening. Everyone who has a sincere interest in looking, what I observe, and, you know, is I just observe the thought stream is happening and thoughts are coming and going. It's not like I'm sitting here and I'm saying, oh, I'm the thinker and now these are my thoughts, because I know I have no control over the thoughts. What I'm speaking now, I don't know where this is coming from. Like, it's just thoughts coming. And there's no script or there's no plan what I'm going to talk. And this is with thoughts all the time. So when, yeah, I feel like when you're honest to yourself and see what's happening, there's like a distance which is created between your presence and thoughts. And that's a beautiful moment, because for the first time, guess what? You're no longer dictated by thoughts, and thoughts can no longer get at you. And that's a wonderful and a beautiful thing. So anyway, so what happens usually is we are fully identified with thoughts and we see the world from thoughts. So in this analogy with the mushroom and the ant, it's exactly like that. So take this analogy, and if you ask the ant, right, and say, hey, where are you going? It will defend this foreign installment from the spore, and it will say, oh, I have to go to this forest because my friends live there. It will make up an excuse or some reason which has nothing to do with what the ant truly wants. It's just being hacked. And this, I truly believe, is the same thing with us with thoughts, for instance. Just one example. But if you just observe yourself, what drives us crazy? What, like, you know, every day it has the power to drive us crazy is thoughts about the future, or thoughts about, I should have done this, I should have not done this. What if I did this? What would happen? These, or like, you know, next week, in 1 week, I may have cancer because the likelihood is that this and that, right? So thoughts have the power to destroy what we call peace, but not because that's their nature, because in a way we give them the power, because we have never ever questioned whether the thoughts are from us or about us. Never ever have we questioned it, because it sounds such like a ridiculous idea. But just, you know, what I'm sort of saying is I invite you to do that and just sit down and observe what thoughts do. And when you see the nature of the thoughts, because what happens is, you know, what truly happens is a thought comes, like you're sitting here in the presence, a thought comes up, and then what happens is, without questioning, we pretend like it's our thought, and then we take it from there. And only thoughts only have that power over you because we don't question that they're not from us and not about us. If you had those thoughts going on and they were not about you, none of these, you know, crazy worries that we have sometimes would be able to touch you at all. It's like, you know, many people, they want to meditate or do yoga to sort of calm their mind down, right? To calm down and to relax and so on. I think that's part of the dilemma. That's part of trying to make the action figure, I don't know, coping better with what's happening around. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It helps the action figure. You know, when you meditate, when you do yoga, it helps to calm down the action figure. But what I'm saying, I was never happy with that solution ever, because I wanted to have a radical, absolute solution. And for me, while it helps to calm down the mind when we meditate with that objective, for me, the ultimate solution, the ultimate immunity is to look at the nature of thoughts and question whether this is really us or not. And that's for me where that peace that is beyond the peace of mind lies. And that's just my experience that I want to share. Because yeah, it's available for all of us at all times, all the time. And yeah. So anyway, so there's like those little, tricks. They seem to be very little, but they have such a strong impact on our lives every day. And that was just a little example. And yeah, we can go much deeper than that, but yeah. So anyway, I think that's enough for me talking for now. So we can take the rest of the time if you have any questions. I don't know if you can like raise your hand, or if you want to just chat and unmute yourself, or I will unmute you. So I think the best thing would be if you raise your hand, but I think in the system, not like visually, and then I will unmute you, or you write in a chat a question. We can do that as well, whatever you prefer. Okay, here. Okay, Amok. Hold on. Okay, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi.
Hello. Hello, everyone. As I was listening to you, I just had a question because you said the ultimate subject of reality is not the limit itself, but is something greater than everything. So I was just wondering, if that is our true nature, then do we have any semblance of will, or like control, or any sort of free will?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I would differentiate here. I would say what we take ourselves to be, this limiting entity that you mentioned, that usually pretends it has free will and control, right? It pretends. It's very important to see, because let's go into an example, right? So let's say, um, I don't know, I get a job that I always wanted as this limited entity. And then what happens is, let's say I receive a job confirmation that I got this job. And then what I would do is I would claim and say, look, I got this. That was my will. I wanted to have this job and I got it. And this is the claiming that's happening. But this limiting entity has nothing to do with this at all. But what happens is it constantly creates a story. So what I'm saying is, there's a pretense of free will and control of the limiting entity, and that's sort of a game it plays constantly. But if you ask me, it's like, if you have seen the Simpsons, the intro, there's like this scene where, I don't know if you know the Simpsons, but let's assume you know. There's like a scene where a mother is driving, like, okay, there's a car, it's driving, and it's first zoomed into a little baby that's sitting in front of the steering wheel, and it's like driving like left and right,
Yeah.
and then it zooms out and it shows that actually the mother is driving and the baby has just like a mocking wheel, right? And for me, I see it like that, meaning we pretend always a lot and we say, oh, look, I did this, I'm responsible for this. But it's just a seeming so. But some other thing, in a way, is driving this whole show. But that's what I mean by the higher power. So you, as the limiting entity, has no free will and control. That's what I experienced. But us, as the screen that I said earlier, I think there is a lot of structure, a lot of order in that. For instance, whether you believe or not in astrology, but I think from my experience, there's something true to this. For instance, I was in Bali, and then this astrologer or whatever, healer he was, he told me a few things about my life, and I was like, yeah, I'm not sure, it was very general, so I don't know if it's true or not. But then um, basically he was telling me where the town where I was born. And I was shocked because there was no way he could know it. So that sort of gave me the trust, you know, that there's some higher power that knows things that we are shocked by to know. So I don't know if it answers the question.
Yeah, I think it did. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Hi, I have a question.
Hi.
I'm Krista.
Hi, Krista.
Hi, thank you so much. I've read your book. I really appreciate you hosting this. And I guess my question for you is how, it's hard to explain, but in some sense, this thought system and what you're sharing, in some sense, it gives this a machine, or whatever you want to call me, this body, in some sense it gives me peace, but in another sense it actually really makes me sad. It makes me feel like, well, I don't have free will, I don't have it. It gives me no purpose. I feel like even just the purpose of wanting to awaken and the purpose of searching, I guess that's the best way to describe it, is I feel like it takes away my purpose and maybe some of my identifications. Maybe I'm identifying with that purpose. And so I'm wondering if you've seen other people that go down this path, like how to deal with that kind of depression that comes along with the thoughts pattern, this belief system.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Krista. And that's something I think, yeah, everyone encounters on some level, for sure. It's a very good question because, you know, what we're talking about here is it's like a nightmare for that, what we take ourselves to be, that limiting entity, because it loves to have a purpose. It loves to, you know, to be excited about things that are coming up and think about the future and the past, and it loves all of that. And what we talk about here, it hates it because it means the death for all these things that are going on, you know, this excitement and this, I don't know, this suffering, even suffering. There's even some joy for this, you know, and feeling pity and, you know, being a victim of something. And it's a very exciting world. So you're totally right. So when, you know, when this limiting entity hears about this, you know, that's why this topic that we speak about, there's not, I don't know, 5 million people following this, or, you know, that's not on TV, on daily TV, because it's really the opposite of entertainment, the opposite what this limiting entity wants. Because it means that it's death. But what's sort of happening, what you're describing in my eyes is a good thing, because it means that there's some kind of process going on, and it means there's some kind of distance happening already for you. And, you know, so the best thing is to see that, so when you, let's say, when you feel like, take this example as of a purpose, right? When you say like, hey, I have this purpose and I want to do this in my life and this in my life, as you said, it can be depressive and say, oh no, there's no purpose. Oh no, there's no emotions. You don't have to feel this. You don't have to feel this. So what I'm saying in a way is there's, let's call it two different energies, okay? Two different dynamics. So one dynamic is this thing that you call limiting entity, right? That's sort of in the forefront and it's responsible and suffering, da, da, da. And so what you're saying is this depression and the suffering and this, you know, there's no purpose, being sad and disappointed, it's part of this limiting entity. That's what's feeling that. So in a way, it's, you know, and what it will do, it will resist that. It will say, no way, that's stupid. I don't want to listen to this guy. He will tell me this, and one day I will die, you know, as this limiting entity. But what it does, you know, it's okay also to feel that sadness. It's okay to be depressed in that moment, because what happens is the more you will see through the illusion of that which suffers, the more it's more like, let's say, this limiting entity is in the forefront, in the foreground, and what you are is in the background. And what it does is the more you question that in the foreground, that limiting entity, the background is able to come forward. And you know, it's a process. It's, you know, what helps in that is to be persistent. What helps is maybe to have friends around you who, I don't know, read books, you know, that are in a similar mindset, because you know, like, you know, you have seen the cover of the book, right? You said you read it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the allegory of the cave by Plato. And what you're sort of describing for me is this. Let's say we're sitting here in the cave, right? We're looking at illusions and we think that's the reality. Then let's say we have seen, maybe there's something else, there's the truth, there's the light. And when we say, you know, we feel sad or we feel like depressed, it means that as someone sitting here, we sort of remember the world in the cave and we sort of are nostalgic a bit and be like, oh, but it was so nice, and it's sort of holding on to this, on that energy. But what it requires in a way is to completely let go of this, and this is not easy. You know, it's like a for me, it's like a jump into the unknown. It's almost like imagine there's like a staircase, and there's the last step, and you're sort of required to take the last step, and there's nothing. You take the last step into nothing. It's a complete uncertainty. And we always think, once I feel a ground underneath, I will take the step. But in my experience, it works the other way. It's like you have to have such a trust to take that step, although you haven't seen the ground underneath, but it will always come, that ground. And, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, take risks in life and quit your job and do crazy things like this. I'm not saying that, but it's more like an inner attitude, you know, or inner mindset. So again, as you said, when you have this feeling of, I feel sad about this, you know, this is a bit depressing, that there's no purpose. It's also a level confusion. I want to answer it also from that perspective. You know, so we spoke about this action figure in the movie and the screen, right? So when we hear this message, what I'm saying, when we hear this as the action figure in the movie, then this feels like sad and really not good. But actually, what I like, you know, the message is actually for the screen to remember, that the screen remembers what it is. The message is not for the action figure, because guess what? The action figure functions the best when it's fully in the movie, you know, when it's putting out all its emotions, when it's like going from the past to the future, when it's planning all this. This is sort of the nature of the action figure. So what's important to see here is, when you feel this and you feel the sadness, see that this is still the action figure. It's sort of, in a way, on the path from the cave out, you know, sort of, that's sort of where you are then. So what I'm saying is, yeah, feel it, see it, but see that this is not it yet. It doesn't stop there. And actually, you know, if I had to answer the question of, does the action figure have a purpose? Yes, it does, you know. Maybe you have the purpose, I don't know you, but you have the purpose, let's say, to, I don't know, heal the world through yoga. I don't know, I'm just making it up, you know. And that's the purpose maybe of the action figure Krista. And maybe the purpose of the action figure Benjamin is, I don't know, to speak with people who are interested about this topic, or I don't know what. You know, but what we are speaking about here is, what I'm saying is, we're not that action figure. We have actually nothing to do with it. And we're that screen, which is pure love, which is joy. And that doesn't have a purpose. That it's unconditional love. Look, if we take the concept of unconditional love, it's something that sounds so wonderful and so beautiful. So many people that I see, for instance, in the spiritual communities, yoga communities, is basically that they try to practice unconditional love. But if you ask me, unconditional love is not possible in the wall of the movie, in the action figure, because we're so conditioned, and it's part of this action figure to judge and to be mean and to say mean things, But what I'm sort of saying is this unconditional love is an attribute of the screen. The screen doesn't have a purpose, and that's what you are. But it's a beautiful question, because it represents many of the dilemmas in the search. And we take it first like, oh, but this is really not good for me. Yes, and I went through this phase as well at some point, but that's really important. It's a very important question. It's important to go beyond that and say, and look, is that really who I am, or am I still in the movie, or is that the screen? So I don't know if that answered your question.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that does help. I guess just as clarification, the action figure can't ever become aware that the action figure is the screen.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. It cannot.
So
the action figure is not the screen. Like, in a way, you could also say that, like, let's say we usually think that awareness or consciousness is a function of the brain, or it's a function of the action figure. But even the, neuroscientists today, they see that it's not a function of the brain. There's consciousness, and the brain or the body is within consciousness. Consciousness comes first, and then is the brain. So it's similar to that. The action figure can never leave the movie. It can never become the screen.
Okay, so basically, if I'm feeling the depression, or feeling like, well, I gotta realize I'm the screen, I just can remind myself that that's the feelings of the action figure. Those thoughts are not mine. The action figure is not who I am. And maybe just let the action figure keep following her path. Like, because I do have things I'm really passionate about, which that's what it feels like it takes away, like healing arts and things like that. But I could just say, hey, this action figure wants to keep pursuing the healing arts and wants to keep pursuing whatever she wants to keep pursuing. So I'll just let her keep pursuing that, but keep reminding myself that I'm not her.
Exactly. And guess what? The difference is defined, but the important difference is that you no longer, by pursuing your passions as Krista, you no longer try to find ultimate peace in those actions and in your purpose, but because your ultimate peace is already there. It's not something you become, it's what you already are. Because that's the dilemma. We try to follow the passion of the action figure in secret, believing that one day through that we will be, I don't know, enlightened or something,
Yeah.
But that's exactly the dilemma. So what I'm saying is, don't follow that path. Yeah, like the action figure will continue that and put all her passion and all her energy into that, but not identifying and saying, one day by doing this I will enlighten the world or myself, because that's already so. It's like the same when people say, oh, I want to be more in the moment. I read this book that I can become more in the moment. And guess what? You can read 100 books about that, explain to you how you can get more into the moment, but you would only really find interest in that idea and become a professional. But you would realize after 1 year, after 10 years, after 50 years, that it's not possible to constantly stay in the moment, because guess what? It's not possible not to be in the moment ever. So by us buying into the idea that it's possible not to be in the moment, we going into the search on that level, while the solution is already way before, because it's not possible for anyone ever to leave the moment, and that's sort of the trick that the mind plays constantly.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's not possible for anyone to ever leave the moment. So it's not possible for me to be anything other than the screen.
Ever. You are
Right.
never anything else, ever. Maybe you believe you are not the screen, and so strongly that it seems real, but it never actually happens, ever.
Wow. Okay. That really helped. I really appreciate your analogies. The analogies are really what kind of get through, I guess. I don't know what it's getting through to, but thank you.
Yeah, they have. Thanks. Thanks for your question. It's great. Okay, we have maybe time for one more question, if anyone has one. And if nobody has one, it's fine as well. So just maybe as a last thing, so I'm planning to do these online meetings every Monday and Thursday now at 7 p.m. Swiss time. And yeah, so if you feel like you want to come again, feel free to join and tell your friends if you like. And yeah, looking forward to see you guys again. And thank you for your interest.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.